Right, so Labour has built itself a little army, and they've given it handcuffs. Welcome back to British Reform. Let's get into it. Angela Rayner's pet project, the Fair Work Agency, has just been handed the power to arrest people, use reasonable force, conduct unannounced workplace inspections, search individuals, seize documents, and detain suspects. All in the name of workers' rights. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds less like a workers' rights agency and more like a mid-budget crime drama on Channel 4. But no, this is real. This is actually happening. Labour has created what critics are already calling the jobs police, and they've given it a budget of £60 million a year. Your £60 million, by the way. Let's rewind for a second. The Fair Work Agency was Angela Rayner's brainchild, her legacy project, her big gift to the British workforce before she dramatically stepped down as Deputy Prime Minister last year. She championed the Employment Rights Act, which is apparently the biggest shake-up to workplace protections in a generation. And to enforce all these shiny new rules, they've built this brand new body to replace the various enforcement agencies that already existed. Except here's the thing, they haven't just replaced them. They've turbocharged them, wrapped them in a stab vest, and handed them a warrant card. Under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984. Yes, the very same law used to police actual crime. This agency can now rock up to your workplace unannounced, demand entry, and if you don't play ball, get a warrant and come back with a legal equivalent of a battering ram. Officials confirmed in government documents that force may be used where reasonable and necessary. Now in theory that sounds sensible. In practice, we're talking about a quango with 61 million quid a year and an instruction to expand its remit, walking into small businesses in Wolverhampton and Leicester armed with powers that most police forces would be quite happy to have. And that's where it gets spicy. Because it's not just the arrest powers that have businesses rattled, it's that instruction to look at future remit expansion. In plain English, that means they are already planning to grow. The Institute of Directors flagged it almost immediately. Alex Holchen pointed out that the agency already has broader powers than the enforcement bodies it replaced, including the ability to enter premises without a warrant in certain circumstances. And now they are being told to think about where they could reach even further, without, she added, proper scrutiny or consultation with business. Think about what that means for a moment. You've got a new body, barely off the ground, already flush with cash, already armed to the teeth with legal powers, and the government has essentially said, right, now think about what else you could do. That's not an agency. That's a snowball at the top of a very steep hill. Speaking of steep hills, let's talk about the businesses actually at the bottom of it, because the Federation of Small Businesses is not happy. Tina McKenzie put it diplomatically when she said small firms are already facing an enormous amount of change through the Employment Rights Act. What they need, she said, is guidance and support, not the threat of an ever-expanding enforcement reach. And that's a fair point, isn't it? Britain already has a record backlog at employment tribunals. The system is creaking. The last thing a struggling small business owner needs is a brand new agency sniffing around with handcuffs when they haven't even been given a clear rulebook to follow yet. The Conservatives, naturally, have gone in hard. Shadow Business Secretary Andrew Griffith called it a blank check to expand powers and raised unemployment even further. And in a line that is frankly quite good for a Tory politician, he pledged to scrap the body and give its staff first-hand experience of finding a new job. Look, you've got to hand it to him. That's a bit of wit from the blue corner. Whether you believe he'd actually follow through is, of course, a completely separate question. Meanwhile, the government's defense is essentially, look, we're just consolidating existing powers under one roof. A spokesman said it's about making things simpler for businesses, creating a level playing field, and targeting rogue employers who undercut the law. And look, in isolation, that's a reasonable argument. Nobody's weeping for the dodgy factory owner paying below minimum wage and ignoring modern slavery protections. The principle of enforcement isn't the problem. Genuinely, protecting workers from exploitation is something most people across the political spectrum can get behind. But here's where the principle collides with the reality. The Employment Rights Act also introduces day one rights to unfair dismissal claims and a simplified tribunal process, Changes that industry figures warn could unleash an absolute tidal wave of claims on an already overwhelmed system. So you've got more claims coming in, a tribunal backlog that's already at record levels, and now a £60 million enforcement agency with arrest powers and ambitions to grow. That's not a safety net for workers. That's a bureaucratic supernova. And small businesses, the ones who create most of the jobs in this country, the ones already hammered by national insurance hikes and rising costs, are standing right underneath it. The deeper question here isn't whether workers deserve protection. Of course they do. The question is whether building an enforcement body of this scale, with this much power and this much money, and telling it to think bigger before it's even properly got going, is actually the right way to achieve that. Because if businesses start pulling back on hiring, if the tribunal system collapses under the weight of new claims, if the agency overreaches into perfectly legitimate workplaces because its remit says it should explore expansion, then the workers' labor says it's protecting are the first ones to suffer. Angela Rayner may have left the building, but her shadow is very much still here. And it turns out it comes with an arrest warrant. If you want more on the stories labor doesn't want you talking about, you know the drill. Smash that subscribe button and stay locked into British Reform. We'll be back shortly.